You're on Zoom, but not in the room.
Okay. Well,
Just a second. Sam's going to introduce you.
All right, so one of the, being vice president is a challenging job because you've got to find demonstrators. This is the easiest pitch that I ever had for a demonstrator. Paul signed up last week. John looked at his form and it has along there, will you demonstrate? And he said, yes. And I tapped him on the shoulder and said, would you like to do a demonstration? He said, when? Is next month okay? I said, fine. And that's without even knowing what he was going to do. And then when we found out what he was going to do, it's even more exciting. So give a good hand for Paul up here as he shows us how to turn these wine glasses that we can make it the after turning parties a whole lot more.
there you go. Makes it a lot more fun. Well, thank you. I actually, I am a member. I have been a member off and on for quite some time, and they just won't let me come generally because they prefer that I was someplace else, which is very understandable. Well, the good news and the bad news this evening is that the bad news is I'm going to be doing the demo. The good news is they're mercifully short. So hopefully you'll get some tricks out of it. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I've got some antihistamines I'm taking right now, which have me as dry as a desert with this time of the year. So I apologize if I choke up a little. I've got something to drink back here. Will this be a robust infomercial? Maybe. I am a robust dealer, as many of you know. I brought my robust machine. This is a Sweet 16 for two reasons. One of those is that I have this thing set up so that it fits me like a glove. I have been turning for close to 40 years now, and probably not quite as long as you, but getting there. Huh? Think what? Maybe not. Maybe not. Anyway, I was in one part of my life, I thought it would be a lot of fun to be a production turner. Well, that was another mistake that I made in my life, and I'll show you why that was a mistake. I was lucky enough. I know some of you may have heard of a gentleman named George Hatfield. Maybe not. George taught production wood turning at the University of Sydney for 40 years as a real close friend of mine. He comes over and spends time with us every summer. And I was fortunate enough that he taught me a lot of techniques and a lot of tricks on what to do. Production wood turning is one kind of those funny deals. I had a friend of mine, I came from San Antonio, and one of the club members there had said, oh, I'm a production turner. And I said, oh, really? What are you doing? He made seam rippers. And he said, I made 100 of them last year. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of seam rippers, man. Did you get those slides that I sent you? Pop up one of those right quick. The one that's got, this is what I turn. This is an order I did just before Christmas. I actually haven't done any since then, so I'm a little bit rusty. You know, you get your muscle memory kind of fades a little bit. The whole idea behind this is that I made what I call a universal base, and with that, you can put a champagne flute on it, you can put a wine glass on it, margarita glasses. Sky's really the limit in that respect. And the idea behind it was, that's two pieces. I've had several people ask me, well, is that, do you turn off one solid chunk of wood? You could, but it'd be a huge waste of material. And all you gotta do is choke a little bit, and then you gotta start all over. So what I'm gonna show you this evening is how I turn the stem and how I turn the bases. And the idea behind production is that I was talking to some of the guys earlier. The company, I was an artist for a company out of Brooklyn called Uncommon Goods. You may be familiar with them, may not. I did stuff for them for about 3 years, and they were extremely finicky. They wouldn't allow me to give them glasses that had more than 100,000th of an inch variation across this top over here. And I finally got them nailed down and go, guys, I'm making each one of these by hand. You know how hard that is to do? Well, they backed off a little bit. But they didn't want more than a 1/16th of an inch variation. If they set 50 of them across there, they wanted to set a flat plate on the thing. So they paid me pretty well, but they made me earn it. I'm telling you, they were hard guys to work for. So when we moved up here, About 5 years ago, my joke is I called my buyer and I said, I tell you what, I'm moving my shop and as soon as I get it set up again, I'll give you a call and let you know. I didn't have that phone number anymore. I don't plan to do that anymore. But the idea behind it is that I'm going to show you how we turn the base, how we turn the stem, and how you make these things repetitively. The demo itself is going to be, you're going to go, that's all you do it. It's really easy stuff to do. I'm telling you, this is really, really easy to make these things. The key is setting up a sequence of events that lets you make a lot of them just alike in a hurry. Flip over to the next, my next slide. That's just another shot of it. They also wanted some champagne flutes and a couple of margarita glasses. So that was eight pairs right there. Let's go to the next one. One more over. Okay, so that's same base. Champagne, margarita glass. Let's go to the next one. Same base, looks remarkable. Wine glass. Now the wine glasses that I use, I found the source of if you get around jewelers very much, you get these high quality crystal glasses. One of them is a company called Rona, R-O-N-I. Very expensive stuff. Well, I found their source. And those are Rona crystal glasses on here. I don't pay $18 a piece for them, but that's what you buy them for, 18, 20 bucks a shot. Let's go to the next one. That's a champagne flute. Base looks remarkably similar, what do you think? Okay, let's go one more. That's production turning. A friend of mine said, oh, I turned 100. Well, I told you the guy did 100 seam rippers last year. That's 75 right there. That's a typical week's run for me. Most of the time I try to do between 75 and 100 of them. And I did those every week so that I'd get an inventory built up because when I got a purchase order, they'd want a bunch of them right now. So this was what I did every day, all day long for 3 solid years, and I'll never do it again. I will do so for friends. I do go to craft shows and things like that. But the idea behind it is it's easy to make something one thing. It's not so easy to make 100 of them exactly the same if you're turning it by hand. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do this evening. There's a few little tricks. Hopefully you'll walk away from here learning a couple of things. One of those may be just how bad my demos really are. And I've been told that they're really like getting a prostate examination from Captain Hook, but I'll leave that up to you guys. I'm not so sure about that. So, at any rate, here's what I start off with. I take a chunk of mesquite and I mill down blanks. They start off with blanks. I'll cut these blanks anywhere from 7/8 to an inch square, and they're about 5.5 inches long, something like that. Well, how the heck do you get the wine glasses in there? Well, yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's mesquite, always. It's always mesquite, always mesquite. I have tried other stuff, but everybody wanted mesquite. So that's the key with mesquite. And I want to show you a couple of things about that, as a matter of fact. So anyway, what I did is I ground a bit to match the profile of the wine glass, and I drill a hole in it. Well, you know, when you get a little spindle in there, it's kind of hard to get stuff centered. So if you just go ahead, am I out of the shot? Oh, okay. Where do we go here? I don't know where I am.
Just point at.
Right there? Okay. There we go.
Camera in front of you.
So what you see, and I'm gonna pass this around.
Just point it. Close the camera.
Well, oh, there's the camera. Okay. See ya. You know. Yeah. I'm a wood turner, man. I'm not. I might have a YouTube channel one of these days, but it won't be soon. So anyway, I'm going to pass this around. What you'll see and what I do in order, I'll go ahead and cut the blanks. I'll do maybe 100, 200 of these things that are shot. And I do 100, 200 of these on my drill press. So one of the problems you have when you start doing this is you're going to find that you got to get this boy dead center on there or you'll cut through that hole. Well, the key to that is once you've done the drill press, you flip it over and you just touch it with the drill and that gives you the center point for that side. So I'll pass those around so you can take a look at that. Then the base, where does the base come from? Well, the base is a hole saw. Now that's the size that I needed. Well, as anybody knows, if you put a disc on a machine before, it's hard to get them centered. Well, I took the drill out of the hole saw, put a center point in there, so when a hole saw comes down, cuts this thing, it puts me a center right there. So it makes it real easy to find the center. And I'll do 200 of these that are shot, sometimes 300. I have a box that I try to fill up, and I'm about empty of the stuff now. So I started another run before much longer, but that's the blank for the base. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the base. Okay, now what do we do? The next thing I did, I remember everything that I do. I'll tell you what. Trade that blank. Where's that blank? On that back. Yeah, I'll trade with you. Same thing. Everything I'm going to show you tonight, I'm going to do much slower than I would, of course, if I were working on a bunch of these things. But okay, at this stage of the game, cameras are. I have the hole drilled in it, and I got the center for it. Well, now I got to have something to hang on to. How do we do that? Well, here's what's going to happen here. I'm going to put a center point, center drive in here. We're going to put this guy on the center. This fellow right up here. Now, one of the things you'll find about my lathe that's different, and I've never been able to convince Brent to do otherwise, I got a big old hand wheel out here. And when I'm ready to do something, that moves it away from me. Now I'm ready to go. I can get everything away from it. So I don't generally turn the lathe off. What I'll do, I'll show you this little piece that I do here right now. I'm going to cut a dovetail on the end of this square blank. If I were doing this, I would do this same operation 100 times, 200 times. So let's cut one on here now. It's working. Yeah. Now, what I'd ask you to do is hold your applause until the end. That way. Okay, so here we go. I want to get a dovetail on the end of this thing. So I took a big old square. There we go. It's just a big square. This would have been a bidan at one point. And I ground a different point on the other thing. You can see what I've done. So what I want to do, get that dovetail on here. That's it. That's how fast it goes. Now, if I were doing another one, I'd just grab it, put another one on here, and off we go. Just keep going. So everything is multiple times. I don't do anything one thing at a time. You'll see this we're going to do one at a time tonight because you don't want to watch me do 200 of them. But what I've done at this point is I now have turned a dovetail recess on the back.
If you turn it off while you're talking, it's hard to hear you.
I'm sorry.
Can you turn the lathe off?
Oh, did I? Oh, yeah, sure. I'm sorry. So I used to have the eagles running behind me back here, so I don't pay attention. I've cut a dovetail on this, and well, why the heck are we going to do that? Well, here's why the heck we're going to do that. I'm going to take knockout rod and get that out of here. I have students that just kind of on the side here, but I'll show them how to do this. And the first thing to do is hang on to it and knock it out like that. Poke the hole in the palm of their hand. They'll do that once. I didn't even have to tell them about it after that. Okay, so now we're going to take a chuck, one of my fabulous Bulldog chucks. This is one of my prototypes. Oh boy. And it has double dovetail joints on it. We're going to use both sides of that here shortly. Whatever I did with it. There we go. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put that guy right here. I've done this demo a few times for other clubs, and my wife was with me the last time, and okay, got it. And I thought I did pretty good. You know, I asked her, I said, well, what do you think about my demo? And she said, I thought you did really well. But I do think you missed two great opportunities to shut up. So I will. Okay, so what we've done now, I've made this thing where I've got somewhere I can grab onto it. Okay, it's good and solid now. I've run my tailstock back into the recess where I have the hole for the wine glass. And let's turn her on. Kind of round it out a little bit here. Now I have everything set up over here This is exactly the way I use them. And when I'm working, when I'm really doing this stuff, I don't even look. I can reach, I know exactly where the tool is. Can you hear me? I'll back over this. Okay. All right. Well, anyway. Uh-oh. Need to move my leg a little bit. That came out pretty ugly. You can tell it's been a while. Okay, there we go. All right. So how am I going to make this one like all the rest of them? Even with that woo-ha there. I have a little template here that looks exactly like the wine stem. And what I've done at each point is I've marked it to tell me what diameter I want at that particular spot along the stem. So I'm going to turn it back on here and you'll see what I'm talking about. Maybe. Okay. With that, now I'm going to take a parting tool and I have calipers set up to tell me exactly what diameter I'm going to be in each location. Sorry about that. I use several different calipers. Each one of those is for that specific diameter on that template. We go across here like so. Where are we? Like so. Okay, so the next one would go here, here, and here. So these are going to tell me the diameters I want to make the stem. That's a pretty ugly looking stem right now, but we can get past it. Okay. It's already starting to look like a wine stem, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to take this down just a hair right here. What's ultimately going to happen is that this section will be the tenon that I put in that base. It's going to be a 1/2 inch. I turn this within like 3/1000, 4/1000 over so that when I do drill a hole in the base, it's a good tight fit. Sometimes it's a little looser than others, but you know, that's where we go. So where we are right now is this. I know what each one of these diameters represents because I have used it with a caliper. Okay. Now let's see if we can't make it look like a wine stem. Get my nest built. You see where I turned to those marks down here? Those are now turned away. This is still real rough right now. But that tells me there's two things I have to be aware of. Because that's a tapered hole in the end of that thing, it's real easy to get the wall thin enough to turn all the way through it. If this thing went dead center, it would be real easy to kick it off to one side and also cut through the side. So what hopefully I will show you this evening is just how thin this wall is. Now it's going to be extremely thin, but that's okay because what we're going to do is we're going to epoxy a wine glass stem in there. So now it's going to be as solid as the epoxy, the glass stem itself. So it doesn't have to be thick. All righty, so let's continue on. I'm going to continue to just make some of the change here. So just hang with me a minute. Good, certainly. A good light. All right. See if I can make this work here. It's a little fat right there. So let's clean that out just a hair. Now, by using a skew, I get two advantages. One, I get a real clean cut. And it's almost, sorry about that. That thing will maybe work on what I thought. I always use skews for two reasons. One, it gives me a real smooth surface in here so that sanding is almost not necessary. I will sand only with 220 grit and that'll be it. It'll be ready to go. I do leave on purpose. I do leave some tool marks on these things, believe it or not, because I want people to realize this didn't come off a machine or out of a mold. Some joker like me has been standing out there with some sharp machine in his hand, and you can see the tool marks. Now they're not real obvious, but you'll see them. You'll see what I'm talking about. But I don't try to get it perfect, simply because I want it to look like it's been handmade, because it has been. Okay, so back at it here. Not too bad. All right, I got a little tear out right there.
One thing, would you show us about your left hand drill?
Sure. Thank you for asking that question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to repair this little Ruha right here. It's kind of hard to see. We've got a little bit of tear out right there. One of the things that differs between professionals and amateurs is we know how to hide on mistakes a lot better. And the nice thing about working with mesquite, this will look like a flaw that was in the mesquite when I get finished. So it won't look like it was a mistake. He asked me about handling a skew. There's two things about the skew. I love skews. Most people hate them. A lot of guys that I talk to think skews are good for two things. One is to open the paint can and the other is to stir the paint. But actually they are very useful too. But I use three different sizes depending on what I'm doing. When I'm roughing that thing down while I go, this is a 1-inch skew. When I'm doing my detail work, this is a 3/4. This is maybe my favorite tool in the whole arsenal. I absolutely love this tool. And then when I'm doing the detail work down here on the end, I use a 1/2 inch. And you'll notice on mine that, get a little closer picture. The edges are really rounded over, so it rolls really, really easy on these tool rests and moves easy. Can you see those? Oh, there we go. Yeah, see how rounded that edge is? That makes it super smooth to run on the tool rest. Yeah. Now I grind mine. You can see this particular angle. I grind all of mine with this long and short point on it. Can you see that okay? Let me get a bigger one. See the long and the short point? This is a really critical part of using a skew. Very, very critical. There is a school of thought that wants these things rounded, a radius on the end of it. Raffin came up with that. I can tell you, Raffin has sat at my table and broken bread with me many times, and he will admit that was a mistake. He He uses the radius back in the day when he was learning how to use these things because that was the way he got the fewest catches. But it's kind of, he's developed this whole following of these things. And I don't know, it's nuts. But the short point is really a vital part of using a skew. Now, you'd ask me about how do I use a skew? There's two things that the way I learn, I'm kind of more of a classical turner in that respect. I have to be able to hold the tool rest. Robust makes, and a lot of companies make a much taller tool rest. They call it a comfort tool rest. I call it the discomfort rest. I can't use it because, as you noticed a while ago when I'm turning, can you get a shot of my hand here? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, there we go. You notice what I'm talking? I'm anchoring the tool, holding on to the rest like this. Now, how do you use the skew? It's not this left hand that does the work. It's the right hand that does the work. This guy just anchors it and helps control it. But if you want to roll a bead, what you're going to do, watch my shoulder, it's going to come up. It's like a shooting pool. You're going to come up and roll down into the thing like that. But all the work for turning with a skew is in that right hand. Or if you're left-handed, the other hand. But it's all back here, not up here. This is just for anchoring and kind of helping control it a little bit. But when I turn, this is the motion that I'm going. We're going around and down. Okay, same thing this way. And also holding the skew is, how do you hold this thing? Well, if you're going to turn to the left or the end to the outside, put your thumb on top. Okay, so that when you're rolling, it's a natural turning your wrist to just roll your wrist right up. Okay, if you're going to go from this direction, you're going to go turn this way and come on top and come up. You want it to be something that's a smooth turn. Didn't see it? Okay. Well, what I'm doing, if I'm going to turn this direction, I start flat. I've got my thumb on the tool rest here, and I'm turning my wrist up. So it's a real natural feeling action. Okay. If I'm going to go this way, then I'm holding it over the top, and I'm just bringing my thumb up to the top. So it's a very natural, not awkward position at all. I see a lot of people make that mistake. They're trying to grab this thing, they're trying to turn it with this, and they're forgetting about the right hand. They're forgetting that all the control is back here, way back off the thing. So anyway, that's my lesson on skews. Now I do grind my hollow grind. Can you get a shot of this thing again? These are things that George saw me. This is a hollow grind. And I grind so that this right here, this angle here is 27 degrees. And I have a little template that lets me do that, but I hollow grind on a grinder and I hone it from that point on. You'll notice you may or may not be able to see these things. I haven't reground that tool in almost 3 years. I hone it. And I use, I didn't bring them with me. I have diamond stones, but if you look, if you can get close enough, I don't know if you can or not. You'll see a shiny edge here and a shiny edge down here. Well, if it's hollow ground, all I'm doing now is I'm holding this guy on my stone and I'm running it back and forth and I'm just sharpening that edge. So there's no reason to grind a tool away. Hone. Now I use a fine stone, fine diamond stone to hone it. And then I finish the honing on a razor sharp. So that all my tools are razor sharp. And I can tell when I'm cutting this mesquite, when it starts getting a little bit dull, then I stop, hone it a couple of shots, strop it, and get right back at it. So there's no reason to get over the grinder and start grinding away expensive steel. Say that tool is 10 years old, and it's probably not a quarter inch shorter than it was when I bought it. And it's turned thousands of these things. Okay, so what I want to do, I've got a little divot right here. I'm going to repair that right quick. And that's easy enough to do. I got plenty of repair material here. A little of everybody's favorite, wood turning magic. All right, let's just sprinkle some magic dust on it here. This one is medium, yeah. Now you can use the medium thin. You can really use either one. I don't like the medium because it's just a little more controllable at this point.
You like medium?
So let's just make it so. The you may notice I have some different points on mine. Anybody lab people and anybody in labs, you'll recognize these. These are pipette tips. They are phenomenal for super glue. And I'll bring a fistful the next time I come in. I bought a bag of 1,000 of them, but they are disposable in the laboratory, but they will let you put the tiniest drop. Star Bond will send you these goofy looking little thingamajiggies that they pull out and they're worthless. But those tips are great, absolutely great. And they're real easy to change. You just pop it off, put another one on. Perfect control. Okay, so that was medium. Let's give it a little shot of accelerator here. Let it firm up some. Anybody ever start one of these too fast and get super glue thrown all over your glasses? And I'm not the only one. In fact, I didn't bring mine that I have the super glue on. Okay, it's set up pretty good here. All right, that's chunky. Let's get rid of it. Pretty good. Okay, at this point, I'm almost done. Now, I'm sorry. Good, you be the monitor here. At this point, I'm almost done with the stem. I will go ahead, we're going to put a finish on the thing now, but I don't do anything with this stem down here until I've got everything else on here because I'm going to be gluing that into that base and I don't want that interfering with the wood bonding. Okay, so that's just the way I do it. So let's go, let's put a little stuff on here. Let's sand it down just a hair. I'll step over here. This is 220. Now I'll step back over. Neil, we don't have a dust collector in here, so when I'm standing, you want to stand over here close and breathe in real deep so that we get don't. I guess not. Okay. Okay, so that's all the sanding it needs. That's it. We're done. So, what's next? Well, the first thing is that I didn't get that beautifully done, but you'll see the yeah, I'm not happy with that. Let's do just a hair more on there. This mesquite is super dry. This has been cut and down for, I know, 25 years. And so it's like super dry. Do a real quick one here. One more bump.
Oh,
I'm sorry?
where can we get
Pipette tips. I'll tell you what I'll do. Next meeting, I'll bring some. I got a bag, a big old bag of them. You can get them off Amazon. They're just regular pipette tips. Okay, that's solid. Let's see if we can get that knocked down a little bit. One of the things you'll see different about my lathe, because I moved this tailstock hundreds and hundreds of times. Most manufacturers, and I have not been able to convince Brent yet, you don't need the handle back here. You need the handle up here where you are. So I have control of all this stuff right here. I don't have to reach over this. You do this all day long, you'd drive you crazy. As you can tell, I've done it all day long. It's just driven me crazy. Let me get that off there. Yeah, much better. Now, when I'm sanding it, you'll see little rings along here. I sand those away. And it takes almost no time at all. When I don't see those on there anymore, I know I'm done. Now, what do I do with this? This thing is bone dry. It's going to eat finish like crazy. So what I do is we move to the, I take, you can buy these at Walmart. They come in a roll. I think they're called Bounty, and you just cut them up in 2-inch squares. But that's paper towels. So, like the off-Broadway show, Absorb the Mesquite. That's what we're going to do here. This is lacquer, just plain old garden variety lacquer like you'd use on a piano. I cut it 50-50, and I'm going to use this as my sealer because I'm going to put a finish on here of CA glue. But if I don't do this first, it's going to take a tremendous amount just to get these pores sealed. So I'm going to seal it with lacquer. The advantage of using lacquer is twofold. One of those, it makes a wonderful sanding sealer, and it dries almost instantly. Sorry. I'll get used to this in a moment. One of the great advantages of using a sanding lacquer is that it's a sanding sealer, and it dries almost instantly. So when you're doing lots and lots and lots of these guys, you don't have time to screw around and wait for this thing to dry. It needs to be dry right now. And that's what lacquer does. You can see that's completely dry. Now, what I do is I'll put this on here and you'll see when I can see my reflection on this thing, I know that I've sealed it up pretty well. So I'm not going to talk anymore about that. Doesn't take much. See that reflection? Okay. So we're done. Okay. Now it's time for the show. At this stage of the game, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to squirt it with a little accelerator, and then we're going to put super thin CA glue on it. Ah, look at that. Don't we hate that? Hang on a minute. Let me, that can be fixed. If I were counting in production, I would throw that one away. But I'm not. Yeah, pretty much have it. Okay. Okay, now for the star of the show. Yeah. Yeah. I'm without horse around with it too much longer. I'm going to put CA glue on here. Now, here's the story with CA glue. If you're going to use this stuff, you got two choices. You can work with it real fast, or you can wear your Depends. Because if you don't work with it fast, you'll soon know why you have your Depends on. Because it sticks to you and burns you like crazy, and you can't get it off. It's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So you will be using your Depends. Otherwise, you got about 10 seconds to work with this stuff before it starts burning you. Don't ask me how I know that. Okay, here we go. Super thin. See, there we go. We got it. Bingo. See that burning? Because it's a stem, I'll generally put 3, maybe 4 coats on there, but this is dead dry right now. We're ready to go. One more. And you can see on my finger, yes, that's stuck. And yes, it burned me, but I get it. I'm okay. So production wise, nice and dry, nice acrylic finish, going to last for a long time, can be handled. It's the ideal finish for this kind of activity. It's really durable. In fact, it won't come off your finger all that easily either. So what have I done so far? We've gotten this piece finished right here. Now we're going to turn this tongue over here. That is should be a 1/2 inch in diameter, plus or minus about 3/1000ths. Be pretty close. That's how they come off. Now we'll pass this around. I'm gonna pass this around just so you can look at it. This is not perfect, but I haven't done them in a while. So how long would it take me to do one of these glasses start to finish? And the time I picked up the mesquite and started milling the blanks all the way through, I can do a glass in about 20 minutes. If I'm really pushed, I can do it a little faster than that. But typically the production was, I made them in pairs, and I could make, in a day, I could make 40 pairs of them. And that's everything. That's, cutting them down, milling them. If you count all the little increment pieces of time, and then epoxying them in, cleaning them up, I could do about 40 pairs a day. Yeah, you go completely nuts doing that. Okay, so that is how I do the stem. Real easy. As I told you earlier in the demo, this is super easy to do this stuff. There's nothing exotic about it at all. It's just knowing the steps. I mean, anybody in here can use a skew. No big deal. You can measure diameters. No big deal. So I haven't done anything that is beyond the ability of anyone sitting in this room. Okay, let's go. What do we do with the base? Let's toss this away over here someplace. Usually, now here's the other thing about the stem has to be a perfect length. Let me hang on just a second. Let me see that. Where's that stem a second? I'll give it right back to you. Let's see how close I got. I am dead on. If I hold it this way, maybe you'll see it a little bit better. Dead on. 50,000 of an inch, maybe. Now do that 100 more times. You have to have one of these. This is the key. Make yourself a little template. You know, this is like a mirror image. That's just half of it. Mark your diameters on here, figure out where you want to go, and then use a calipers that gives you your reference points, and it makes that oh so easy to do. Easy. And if you also look, this one's a little thicker than I normally make them, but look, sorry about that. I'll do one another here in a minute, just for fun. Look at the thinness of the wall. This wall is a little thicker than I normally make them. But again, it isn't a problem. My issue there I want the height of that material to be exactly the same over and over and over. And that's just, there's three things you do. Practice, and you practice. It's the only way to do it. But again, as I say, as you've just seen me so far, there's nothing about this that you can't do. Not a thing. Real simple. All right, so let's get to the base.
Excuse me, is there a reason you don't turn them between centers?
Measurement rather than spring.
Yeah, sure. Good question. That's a great question. The question is, why do I use this kind of caliper? I've made several machinists cry because I round these ends off so that it doesn't get caught when I'm turning. This is a steric caliper. I forget what the things are called now, but it's I don't even know if they make them any longer. I got these off eBay. Why do I use that as opposed to one like a spring? The problem with the spring caliper is they move. They'll open up a little bit on you. This will not move. This gives me an exact diameter, whereas the springs will do just that. They will spring over the top of it. So thank you for that question. But there's a method in this madness. And also there's a method in the fact that these are thin enough that you saw me turning with the parting tool a while ago, that it'll fit inside that groove. Now you can get a bigger parting tool, but the smaller the parting tool, the easier it is to turn these things. They just there's less tension on the material.
Paul, your drill bit that you initially drilled, you said you
Pass that around.
ground that by hand.
I'm sorry.
The drill bit that you drill your initial hole, you.
I'm about to show you that. Don't get ahead of me now. Don't get ahead of me. Okay, so next question is, we got the base. I told you I use a hole saw with a center point and thing, cut the hole. The other thing that's crucial about this thing is the size of this hole saw, the size of this guy, because it's going to contribute to the overall height of that thing. So they all have to be exactly the same. Now, what do I do to do that? Now let's get this guy up here and we'll show you, we'll do a little roughing. See how easy it is to get that thing centered? Off you go, it's already ready to go. So there's two things that I want to do about it. I want to know two pieces of information. I think I brought, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Yeah, here we go. These are some spring calipers, but they're sold all the time. And what I do with these, if this thickness of this guy right here, if this is thicker than I want, all I have to do is mark it. And now I know where to cut it down to. So these are all the same height or the same depth or the same whatever you want to call it. And this one is right on the money. Okay. All right. So what's the other thing? We want to keep them consistent in diameter also. So how do I do that? Well, we go to the bigger one. We do that. Big boy. So where is this one? This one's a little too large, just a little bit too big. Okay. So what we're going to do is cut it down.
You use the same hole saw and cut them all out with, right?
That's correct.
And there's a variation in the output from the hole saw?
No, they're all the same size, but I have the diameter of my base is slightly different than the hole saw. And I do that for this reason, because I want to be able to size those precisely. And, you know, when you're cutting and you're moving that kind of stuff, you're going to change it a little bit. So I give myself a little fudge room in there. I could use that at that point, but I don't. Yeah, for that very reason. I just want to give myself a little room in case something's out of range. You know, nothing's ever perfect in the mesquite world. Okay, so what am I going to do with this thing? All right, now we're going to get our friend Badan, Mr. Badan. That's this guy. And let me get this over here so I don't accidentally knock it off. And I'm just going to round it up a little bit here. All right. I think we were pretty close a while ago. Dead on. You see that? Okay. If I get that little bit of burn mark on it, I know I'm dead on. Okay, so I won't be changing this much at all. Okay, so that now is a diameter I want this thing to be, and they're all going to be the same. So what are we going to do at this point? Well, we're going to tear it up. Can't hear me, can you? All right, so what I've done, you can see a little bit of a burn mark on here. That tells me that I'm where I want to be. Exactly on. Little wiggle room. So what am I going to do? I've run the down across here now to get myself a nice smooth deal. So, thanks, sir. I'm going to wreck it. We need to be able to hang on to this thing and do some work with it. So here's how we're going to do that. In my shop, I have 2 jet air filtration systems hanging over the top of this lathe, and they get brown. Those get brown real fast. But okay, so why did I do that? Well, we need to be able to hang on to this thing and do some work with it. And the best way to do that is with a chuck. Get this back just a little bit further. With some specialized jaws on it. It's fun when you used to make these. I have all kinds of these. Okay, so wide jaws. I'm going to take that piece that I've turned right there, and I'm going to stick it right in there. And that's it. We now have this guy where we can work on it. This is going to be the bottom of the base. Now, one of the things I do frequently, mesquite is, as we all know, has got cracks and nasties in it and all sort of stuff. I examine the blank and I look and see if there's any flaws on the surface. And then I can decide which is going to be the bottom and which is going to be the top. If I see a lot of flaws on the surface, I'll make that the top because I'm going to turn it away. Okay, so okay, let's get her back in here. And let's get this guy back out of the way. So one of the things that I want to do is I want a specific, I'm going to cut a recess into the base so that I have some way to hang on to this thing when I flip it over. Well, what size am I going to make that recess? Bingo. More calipers. Can't see very well with this. That'll work right there. Okay. So that's going to be the recess of my base. Always the same every time. The down. Working on my shadow here. Right, that's kind of rough. I'm working in my shadow otherwise. All right, now for a little special tool here, this guy right here. So, am I going to hang on to it? I'm going to use that guy right there. And I'm gonna cut a dovetail on the bottom of this thing. Just like that. Okay, now, if that's gonna be the base, one of the problems you have, I'm sorry, if that's gonna be the base, one of the problems you have is you want it to sit flat. Well, you can't leave it like that because it'll rock around a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a little concave pull through the base here so that it's just sitting on the outside rim. It'll always sit flat that way. That's what I'm gonna do right now without any further discussion on it. I just use a nice big beefy scraper. This tool, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, is a negative rake scraper. Okay. Regular scraper, negative rake scraper. Negative rake scrapers are not the least bit grabby, but boy, they leave a really, really nice finish. So again, my goal is little sanding as possible. I want these things coming almost perfect off the tool. Much less work that way. So I'm gonna do a little sanding here now. I think we can hang on to that, yeah. Neil, you sure I'm gonna come brace some of this stuff up on? Okay. Nothing ever worked. And here we are back with our old friend absorber, the mesquite. We're gonna do the same thing on the bottom here. We're going to seal the bottom down here. Good enough. I can see my reflection on here, so good enough. We're sealed well enough. All right, so same story as with the stem. We're going to put accelerator on here, and then I'm going to use CA again. Now you have to be really careful on the bottom because what will happen if you get too much CA on here, it's going to build up and phew, it's going to spray off the outside out here and it's going to leave you a streak. It's going to look like a sunburst on there. So we're going to avoid that if possible.
Don't turn your speed down.
Nope. Never change it. I'm sorry. Anybody wants to, I'm running at 10. That's 3,000. I know I got that. See if that guy starts smoking. Yeah. Super thin CA glue is kind of like rattlesnake poison. A little bit goes a long way. So you got to be real careful with it. All right, so we went from a pretty rough looking bunch of stuff a while ago to there we go.
In the tail now.
Kind of shiny and nice now. But you'll also see, you'll notice notice how it's concave. That's a little more exaggerated than I normally make it. I just sharpened my scraper before I got over here, and it's cutting a little more aggressively than I'm used to. So I don't normally put them quite that much, but that's fine. I mean, it's no problem. It's on the bottom. So at this point, we're halfway home. Yay! Okay, so what are we gonna do with the top side of it? We're gonna go back to our original chuck. Remember that recess that I turned on the bottom of this piece right here? There you go. I turned in this spot right here. Well, guess what? Now, instead of gripping that thing, we're going to expand the chuck jaws into that little recess. And there it goes. It's not going anywhere. And you'll notice, by the way, there's not a whole lot of it there. But it doesn't take a whole lot to hold on to these things. That's one of the things that interests me about wood turners. And make a tenon that's that long. You don't need that. So what I've done, just so it makes sense to you, I cut the cut this little groove in here like so. Okay, it matches this dovetail on the outside of the chuck, and so we're going to use it in expansion mode to hold on. And you can see it's not going anywhere. Okay, somebody asked me, you asked me about the drill, right?
Yes.
Well, now we're going to answer your question. I get this guy back down out of the way. It's a short bed. I have a short bed machine because I do demos. I haul this guy around. It's also smaller, so it's easy for me to move this guy around. It has a 1.5 horse motor on it, which is 110 volt. That makes it really easy to use it anywhere. In fact, when I go to craft shows, I have a little generator that I run the thing off of. You can get this model with a 2 horse, but anything from 2 horse up begins to be 220. And if you have 220 in your shop, no problem. If you're going to go remotely, finding 220 is a different animal altogether. And so this is 110. I've used them both. I can't tell any difference between the two. The way Robust makes the inverter on these things is that it has a dynamic feedback system in it. So when I'm running at 10, I'm telling it I want to go that fast all the time. And as I start sticking a tool into it, I'm slowing the machine down, and the inverter's going, no, we need more juice. So it just dumps more power to it. The point of that, it keeps a consistent torque anywhere in the power band. So you get a lot more than 1.5 horse out of these things in reality. But that's what's going on there. Okay. Let's just get that back over here. Now I'm going to slow it down for that Forstner bit because I want to burn it. But this is so that you can see a little bit better. This is a 1/2 inch Forstner bit. Gives me a nice flat bottom hole, nice consistent hole. Don't have to worry about it wandering. Now, if you're just a safety tip for you, if you're using your machine to drill stuff with your tailstock, always hang on to this. Don't ask me how I know. But when you back it up and it stays with this, and now the center comes out, you got a real problem on your hands. Run fast. Wear your depends because you're going to need them. All right, I've slowed it down considerably because we don't need that speed. And I will run that depth to about the depth of the forstner bit. Not that. That's how we drill it. Nothing to it. No, most machines don't move that easily. I've done a lot of work on mine to get this guy. It'll move 3/4 of an inch no matter where I go, just about pumping it. And the reason I do that is when I showed you a while ago, when I'm doing the stems and things like that, or when I'm doing that base, I just slap it on here. It's still running. I throw that thing, and when I'm ready to go, boop, pop it off, grab it. Never shut the machine off. Okay, so let's do the top. I'll tell you what, this one makes enough of a mess. I'm going to put on my. You can't be a real wood turner unless you got a really nasty looking smock, you know. Maybe I'll do this, maybe I won't. I got a pocket back here somewhere. There we go. All right. I got this one in Phoenix a lifetime ago when I was a vendor there. Okay, all righty. So here we go. What I'm going to do is going to use my dear friend, Mr. Scraper here, and we're going to make the top profile. So back we go to 10. And let's get her done. How about that? Now, I'm going to stop at this moment, and we're going to do something that is, I'm going to do something that is kind of along the line of what I talked about a while ago, with having a concave base so it sits flat on the table. Well, you don't want it looking like it's glued to the table. So what I do, and I'm going to show you, is I'm going to cut a little bit of a notch back here so that when it sits down, it's got a shadow line. So it doesn't look like it's sitting there glued to the thing. Okay. Just a little, doesn't take much. About like that. All you need. These are the little subtle things that separate really nice work from crap. I've seen, if you look on Etsy, you'll see mesquite stem wine glasses that look like Walmart wine glasses with a broomstick on them. Horrible looking things, and they're done the same way. They look like they're glowing out of the table. And it's very little subtle things like this that change makes the big change in the world on things. Okay, so I'm going to sand it real quick. You saw me a while ago run the negative rake scraper across there just to smooth it, that one last piece. And when I sand it, again, you'll see little rings on here. I'm going to sand those away to the best that I can, and then I'm done. And it ain't going to take much. That's it. No. Why would you do that? You just get rid of it quicker. Just don't hang on to it as long. That way you don't have to worry your depends on it. You notice I don't hang on to it more than about 5 seconds. And I do two things. Again, some of this little subtle stuff. You may notice there's just a second or two delay when one of the things you may or may not have picked up that I'm doing with this stuff is there's about a second or two delay from the time I put it on here. I let it soak in just a little bit, because if you don't, it's going to splash. So give it a chance to soak. That's what I'm doing right now. Well, for demonstration purposes, we'll call that done. Yeah, close it. Yes, sir.
The lacquer you would use, did I hear correctly that you?
I'm sorry.
50-50?
The lacquer, yes, I cut it 50-50, roughly.
Just lacquer thin.
Just lacquer thinner. Just get the Delft or I get a quart of it, just regular lacquer. There's nothing magic about that. And then I'll cut it 50-50 with lacquer thinner. And I've got, I use a big long, I'll bring some of those too. I got a big long 10 mil transfer pipette that you don't have to worry about pouring this stuff. You just transfer it into these bottles and off you go.
For glass.
I'm sorry?
That's for glass.
Boss. No, I don't think it really matters. What you're doing is you're sealing the surface. So it doesn't play a role in the final finish. It's just we're using it as a sanding sealer. So I don't know. I use gloss just because that's what I get. Yes, sir.
How do you hold your wood when you're cutting it with pole saw?
But I'm cutting with what?
How do you hold the wood when you're drawing the pole saw?
Well, I would drill this vise. And it's one I got years ago. And it's a clamp, and I clamp. What I do with that is I will, I'm running off over here. Wait a minute here. What I do with that is I set up a drill press vise, and I put a center point in the drill press. And I know I will get the dead center on that blank. I'll run that down and get that centered where I want it. Now I know every time I pull the drill, when I clamp my blank into the drill press vise, it's gonna be the same spot every time. So then I can drill that. Now, the problem you get into with mesquite or any hard wood like this, you're drilling the end grain. And it doesn't like that. So it'll cause the bit to drift if you're not careful. And I'll show you this in just a minute on a couple of, they're never gonna be dead center. They will drift a little bit just because the grain is real tight and these are real dry. And the bit's gonna, it's gonna move a little bit, but that's okay. It doesn't matter as long as it doesn't too far. Okay, so let's see if what the heck I do? Here it is. A little bit big. Yeah, I was a little too careful with that one. There we go. What I would do with this one is I would just sand it down a little bit. But that should fit down tight, but that's what you wind up with. I got a little too conservative on that one. Now I can go back and I can sand that down just a hair. And the way I would do that is I would clamp it with another chuck. And I just work that down just a hair. So that was real tight. Or I can just take some sandpaper and just You know, turn it a little bit. It only needs 1,000th or so to go down. That's how you do them. One after another, after another, after another. Now, what I will do with that is I'll flip that over before I put the glass on it, and I sign the bottom log with an engraving tool. And I use the dental tool and dental burrs. And I write my name at the bottom and I date them. And then the way you make that show up is you smear the bottom with a mark slide. And take a liquid alcohol pad, wipe it off, wipes all the out because you have a seal on the bottom, wipes all the other stuff off and leaves your signature real nice and black. And okay, so what do we do now that we got all that stuff turned? Let's see what magic.
Paul, going back to the drill bit for the stem
Huh?
is a unique shape.
Yep.
How did you get that?
I made
Made it?
Yeah.
You just hand grind?
Yeah, just hand grind. It's just spade bit. And just hand grind it to that profile. Now, you got to be real careful with that because it's real easy when you're hand grinding it for one flute to be longer than the other and so it doesn't want to track real smoothly. Somewhere or another, I'm all tied up here. There we go. So the next thing that happens is got to get some wine glasses and get those cut and ready to go. So let's do that. Pull this one straight out of the box. So that is a really, really nice crystal wine glass. It's there. Go down and buy that. That's $20 wine glass. I didn't pay that for them, but that's what they insisted on. And so I use a really high grade of crystal, and you'll be able to feel this. I'll pass it around in a minute. So how do I know where to cut it? Well, it's about finger width. So what I'll do is I'll put my finger right here. I'll mark it like that. Get my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. That's how you take the stem off. Be real careful, that's sharp on the bottom. Just a regular old 3-cornered file.
You just scratch it on the side.
Hmm?
Just scratch it on the side.
Scratch it on one side.
Yeah, just start it, you want,
Yeah, just scar it
and that makes a weak enough point there.
Yep.
Right there.
every time. Now this crystal cuts like butter, I can tell you that. And I've cut some that it's like, but they go. I'll do another one for you.
What do you do for-
Those get recycled. Or whatever they do with them at the landfill, I'm not sure. So the question was, all right. Can you see this very clearly? You don't have to put it here. I mean, that's not, I'm just putting it here. I use about the width of my index finger. And I just make a mark right there. Now I'll do this. I'll sit and do 100 of these at a pop. Regular old 3-cornered file. You can get them anywhere at any hardware store, any big box store. There's nothing magic about it at all. I just come in here. And I'm going to score it right there. And that's all there is to it. See that? Can you see the little score on it? Maybe right there. See the score? All there is to it. Now it's going to leave a little, often it will leave a little bit of a little tooth or something on here. You can see, well, let's see where, see that? leave a little bit of a tooth. What I do with that is I just take the file, pop it, breaks it right off. So now that is the next step. And what we would do at that stage of the game, as soon as he gets this pass back to me. Thanks, sir. I use 5-minute epoxy. It's in there just like that. Just like that.
What does that sell for?
I'm sorry.
What does that sell for retail?
They, Uncommon Goods is selling for 100 a pair. I don't sell them. I sell them for 65 a pair.
Is there a problem with it being a little bit off?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I have more than one drunk looking wine glass over
So
there.
how do you,
What? My dad, thanks Neil for asking that question. Here's what I do. I'll have a balance that will weigh, I weigh 500 milligrams of A and 500 milligrams of B. Okay. Because I can weigh down to 100 milligrams. I mix that. I take a little cup like they use to dispense pills in the hospital, pill cup. I put that on and balance 500 milligrams, 500 milligrams, mix them, put it in, put it in the hole here, bed this guy. And I bed it so that enough oozes out over the top. Now, what's the problem then? If you're not real careful, they'll get off a little bit. And I have some of those in my cabinet. The way I do that is I have another drill press that I just have a flat piece of wood in there that I put a all-threaded rod into, and I press it down so that I know now the base and the top are perfectly parallel. And when you're doing these in batches, I will mix a batch, put it in there, set it down, and I flip it over. Why do you do that? Because the epoxy is going to run out. And the thing you want to do is you don't want to leave the epoxy on there. Uncommon Goods will send them back if you don't. So can't be any visible. So what I learned in the process is that I will go ahead and get this guy on there. I spin it a little bit to get it all distributed, flip it upside down, and now it's real easy for me to wipe that epoxy off. And how do you do that easily? Alcohol. Get ethanol. Rubbing alcohol. Or not rubbing alcohol, but ethanol. Denatured, they call it denatured alcohol. Get that. You can buy 5 gallon or a gallon at a time. Wet one of those pads, use the denatured alcohol, wipe it off. And by the time I go back and weigh out another batch, get it in the glass over here, this guy has set up enough, I can take it out from underneath the drill press and let it finish up, because you'll feel the heat. As the epoxy sets up, it's exothermic. You'll feel that, and it won't move at that point. So then 5 minutes later, what you have is a glass. And that's all there is to it. Nothing to it at all. Told you it's real easy. Anybody can do these. Just knowing the steps. Takes a little while to work those out. But those are the steps. And as a consequence, as you saw a while ago, now you have what I call my universal base. I can put anything I want. I put martini glasses in these things. I put, as you saw, margarita glasses, wine glasses, champagne flutes, you name it. All the different stuff. Dead on. Exactly. Now, not only are the stems the same, but the height of this base is exactly the same in all cases. Remember a while ago, I measured that. I didn't cut it away here, but if you look, see that shadow line on that thing? It doesn't look like it's sitting there growing out of the table. That's what you want. Doesn't take much, but that separates really nice stuff, as far as I'm concerned, from junk. Because people don't know what they're doing, will turn that flat and it just kind of sits there like it's bolted to the table. You want a shadow line so you don't really see the bottom of the glass, but that's how you do it.
Do you by any chance have a handout of the sizes and the dimensions that you've used or that you've got on that story stick?
I'm sorry.
Do you have a handout of that has dimensions?
I don't, I could put one together. It's gonna really depend on the ultimate finish that you do here. I mean, this is just my style. You can make anything you want. But the way you make them, more than one of them, and it doesn't, I'm not suggesting that you do this one. Copy me if you want, but I'll sue you. Whatever you want to do in this respect, make a template. That's the key. And you can see what the key for the template is. The template now is my guideline to tell me I can make these guys all day long, and I have. And the same thing here. I don't have a template here, but I do know the thickness of it. I know the diameter of it, and I know the size of that hole. And then I know where to turn on the bottom down here. And you can see if you looked at this, I don't have a real deep groove in here. Doesn't take much. Just have to hold on to it. But that's all there is.
Hole saw, you have a different diameter, very small diameter drill that goes through.
The hole saw, when I'm cutting the base, what I do, if you're familiar with hole saws, almost all of them have a drill bit in the center to keep it from drifting. I take that drill bit out, and you may have missed that a while ago. I turn a point, so I know it's dead and good, dead and true. I turn the center point, and I put that in place of the drill bit, so that when I cut the hole saw out, I got it set just right, and that point, it makes a little spot right there. And I know I'm dead center on that thing. So what you can't do if you get into making these, and hopefully no one ever does this. You don't have to screw around wasting any time figuring out where the center of this thing is. It just takes too long. You want to be able to stick it on the lathe, turn it, and go on. Now, what you saw me do a while ago, if I were to do the way if I were doing one in its production sense, I can do this whole thing in 10 minutes or less. But I've stopped, because you can't hear me over the lathe. I'm start talking about by the time I would have made 3 sets of these things by the amount of time that we've been talking about right now. Yes, sir.
Say you sold 65 a pair retail.
I buy 65 a pair. The way I sell them in a craft show, the way I sell them is this: I sell them for 35 a glass. You can get a pair for 65, or if you want more than a pair, they're $30 a shot. So if you want four of them, it's $120.
Yeah, but he's in here.
My crystal is not $20. Now I'll tell you a little secret. I have lots and lots of experience importing from our friends on the other side of the world over there that Russia worries about. They cost me $5 a piece. Now they won't, that was some time ago. I bought 500 of them in my last round. Now the cost of freight has gone bananas. I mean, absolutely bananas. I'm getting ready to order, anybody know Kent Rollins? You ever heard of him? He's the cowboy truck wagon cook.
Hello.
Yeah. He has 2.5 million followers on YouTube. I'm finishing up a project. We're getting ready to start with him on the turning whisk handles, mesquite handle whisk for him. $500 a month. So, now that brings up another point. Let's talk about the mesquite in general, and what you can and shouldn't do with these things. Am I on the camera? If you'll notice, see this one, can you see this? What's that?
Camera's the one in front of you, right in front of you.
Up here,
In front of you.
up here closer.
That one.
You may, okay, you see how pretty the grain is on that stuff? These will make horrible wine stems, horrible, because the grain runs across the stem. And the first time you wash it, you snap it right off. You have to use straight grain material in order to have the strength in this thing, or the first time somebody washes it, they're gonna be calling you. Another little secret. And don't ask me how I know that one either, but no, you can't use the pretty mesquite in these. This has to be straight grain stuff. Now the base is another story, but what I try to do is match, pass that around, I'll show you. That's just a piece of mesquite burl. That would be beautiful in a wine glass. But you just have to put it on the shelf and look at it. You could never use it because the first time you wash it, it's disposable almost at that point. Yeah, yeah. Could be a cigar. But that's another little secret that I'll pass along to you. Straight grain. It has to be straight grain. Because I make the stems thin because I want these things to be lightweight. I want them to be delicate. When you get the glass in there, it doesn't weigh any more than the stem and the base do. I mean, they're extremely delicate. They're durable, but they're very delicate. And that's what I'm shooting for is I want this thing to be like, something you get from Walmart. It's a special tool. No, but again, I leave the tool marks on these slight. You may not have noticed those, but if you look at them real close, there's some tool marks on them. And I leave those on purpose. Just so that it looks like they've been hand turned. Some guy, it wasn't some 9-year-old in Thailand making these things. I did them. And every one of them is unique, every one of them is different, and every one of them is hand turned. I do not use any kind of device of any kind. What you saw me doing here, aside from my calipers, is the way every one of them is done. So I'm done. That's it.
Right?
So now you know the secrets of becoming a production wood turner.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry, sir. Yeah, they're mine. I make them. Yeah, these are Bulldog chucks. I used to, don't anymore, but I quit doing that. Some of you may know, you may or might know, I owned a company called Chucks Plus. I made all these chucks. These are mine. These are my chucks. I quit because the shipping and the hassles you go through now are just unbelievable. And there wasn't enough profit margin on them to make it worth my headache any longer. I just said, I'm done. So about 3 years ago, I hung up spurs on that. I don't make them anymore, but those are my chucks. So any questions, any answers? Answers are better than questions. I'm always looking for an answer of something.
About how deep do you have that spade bit going down into the stem?
I'm sorry.
About how deep do you have that spade bit going down into
Good question.
stem?
Here's one of the blanks. And here's what I was talking about too. If you look at these, I'll give you that one. This one kind of sneaked off over to one edge over here. They just will not follow end grain real well. Now, there's a couple little secrets about that I won't share, but no. But even at this, I can make that work. I can make that work because I know where the dead center on this blank is. So when I get it chucked up in there, I'll turn this other piece away and no problem. But occasionally you'll get one that will drift off on you, and I'll look at them, make a decision. They either go in the trash can or they go in the box. We keep making them. Yes, sir.
Of the stem of your glass,
Mhm.
you're filling it up with epoxy, so why would you use special shaped bit?
Well, because you'll have to use a lot of epoxy if you don't. This epoxy, this bit. I mean, you could take a Forstner bit and drill straight to the bottom of it, but you're gonna have to use a hell of a lot of epoxy to get that thing in there. And I'm cheap. But what I did is I drilled a bit, roughly that profile right there. Okay, so that fits pretty good. You can see it. There's a little wiggle room in here. But if I got it any bigger, I just have to use a lot more epoxy.
You just use a drag point bit.
You could,
and
yeah,
fit in
yeah.
there, 'cause you're filling it up with epoxy anyway.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to add a lot more epoxy in it, yeah. So it's just a matter of do 500 times and suddenly some of this stuff starts making sense, that's the difference. Could you do it for 10 of them? Absolutely, absolutely. Or even 100 of them. Not 100 of them a week, but but that's the way I do it. It doesn't make it right. That's just the way I do it. Yes, sir.
Were you saying that you're going to be placing another order for the glasses?
Will I be? Probably not. I have about 300 or so of them left. I don't do this kind of stuff like you saw here anymore. I don't do that anymore. I wouldn't do that with a bullwhip. You know, now I do during the holiday season, starting around Thanksgiving or so, I'll make a pretty good sized run. When craft shows are coming up, we go to the Christmas fairs. We went to Prosper this year at their Christmas fair. We were invited to go to that. It's kind of a joy deal. And apparently they lowered their standards and let us in, but, we sold at that, but that's where I'm using these things at this point. They would probably cost me twice what I paid for them. I got these about 5 years ago. I can tell you, I was ordered, I've got a quote in for 500 of those whisk. $2,000 worth of freight just to get it here. And it's a box that'll be about that. So yeah, you can't believe it. I in another life, I have another company that we build attic lift systems like dumbwaiters. I'll tell you all about those one of these days if you want to know about them. But we install them in your garage, and it's an elevator that runs up and down against the wall unless you put stuff in your attic. I ordered 50 hoist motors a year ago. The hoist motors cost me $200 a piece, and it cost me $6,000 for freight on the things. I had the motor freight, you pay freight, and then all of a sudden customs hands you a bill for another $2,000 just because they look at it. I mean, that's what's happened with it now. That's why I don't do that much of this stuff anymore. It's just the last round of trucks that I bought, I had because we couldn't trust sea freight. I had to order them 90 days ahead of time. And then I had to wait for those I had to air freight them in. You don't want to know what it costs to try to bring 2,000 pounds worth of air freight in from China. You don't want to know. And it's cheap then by compared to what it is now. It would cost me $15,000 to bring them in now. So it's just too much of a hassle. I loved it. I mean, I miss doing it. It was a lot of fun. I met a lot of nice folks and just had a great time. But sometimes it's just time to say, you know, I think we're done. Like this, you know, I think we're done. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. If you got any questions, I would be happy to answer them. If I don't know an answer, I'll make something up that sounds really good. Fair enough? Okay.
Any other questions, quick? Okay, let's take a break for about 5 or 10 minutes and then we'll come back.
Well, we might be able to do something like that. Yeah. Get these things off here. Yeah, you should. It should be cool.
Here.
Yeah.
Good, you know, that's what they begin to hear.
Make sure this is stop. Yeah, stop.
Yeah.